All right, it's been a hot minute. It's been a while. Yeah, and I did a video a while back about Paranoia. Things that I loved about it, specifically this guy here, the Red Box Clearance Edition. Now, for those of you that don't know, I did a full... Oops, I'm cut. Okay, here we go. For those of you that don't know, I did a full, deep dive into Paranoia. The ins and outs of it, the history, how to play it, the best tricks and all that. And I wanted to expand on it just a little bit to kind of get the fullness out of this game, because this box, the red clearance box, does an amazing job of giving you the tools you need to run a good Paranoia game. And in fact, it walks you through your first game, it gives you the tools for the second game, and then gives you an outline for a third game. So this box does a great job of that. But I ran a game this past week in a Christmas theme, and it was the best game that I've ever run within Paranoia, and I want to give to you some of those strategies, those tips and tricks that I employed in that game that made it so good. I'm going to give a really quick kind of introduction to Paranoia. Paranoia is a tabletop role-playing game similar to like Dungeons and Dragons, Call of Cthulhu. The thing is, though, instead of being set in like horror like Call of Cthulhu is, or fantasy like Dungeons and Dragons is, the setting for this game is in a utopian dystopian world. So think of like 1984, think of The Handmaid's Tale, think of We, or Brave New World. But the expression the game takes on is similar to Kids in the Hall or Monty Python. So think of the movie Brazil, right? And that's kind of like the headspace that you need to be in when you're playing Paranoia. Unlike those other games and most other tabletop role-playing games that are collaborative, you're working together for a specific goal, this is competitive. This is a game where you always want to one-up one of your other players. You're always on the lookout for insurgencies or mutants or anything like that. So you are literally out to get your fellow player. And that switch is so hard to get across to my players, and that was always the biggest hurdle when we come into this game, because so many of my players are so used to having that collaboration, that cooperation that Dungeons and Dragons and Call of Cthulhu and all those other role-playing games really need to work. This, if you're all working together, it's not going to be a very enjoyable game, because so much of the enjoyment of Paranoia comes from the razzing of other players, of backstabbing your fellow players, making alliances, breaking those alliances. It's the key to this game. So I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this video, and that is specifically the tips and tricks that I employed in my previous game to help kind of round out. And as I mentioned at the beginning, this box, the Red Clearance Edition box, really does give you a lot of tools, and I'm basically just repurposing a lot of those tools. So I'm also going to be using my game that I used, or that I played earlier this week, as an example of like what I did to kind of solidify what I did. And then use these in your own games to really amp up the fun. So this is tip number one. And this is like the forefront idea. Give the group, the party overall, a very crystal clear and simple mission. Like, make it as simple as possible. Get the MacGuffin and take the MacGuffin somewhere else, right? Like, something extremely simple. Something that you only need like one sentence for. Change a light bulb. Get the troubleshooters from one place to another. So the example that I used in my game, I actually repurposed it so that they were, instead of being at the Alpha Complex, they were at the Alpha Complex, so ELF. Complex, because they were playing Santa's elves, and instead of having a computer, you had the jolly old man himself. You had Santa Claus. Santa Claus was getting old in his years, and he was relying more and more on technology, but much like an older generation, he didn't quite understand how the technology worked, so he was the one that was interfacing with the computer and was also interfacing with the elves, because the thing that I kept saying to my players, he knows when you're sleeping, or he sees you when you're sleeping, and he knows when you're awake. So he's always omnipresent in that sense, and it was just a perfect blending of that. So basically, the mission for those elves were, you need to get my NOS, which is a canister that's in the kitchen, and bring it to me. That's it. I would do it myself, but I'm too busy, so run along, go grab my NOS. The NOS was in a canister with a screw top. Turned out to be a thermos full of hot chocolate. That's all that Santa needed to get off the ground. So, giving crystal clear idea of what to deliver, Made it very, very easy in that sense. The second tip, and this is something that the red box kind of alludes to, but be sure to give each individual player their own covert secret mission, and make sure that those secret missions are an antithesis or an antagonist to another character's secret mission. And this is something that only that character knows. So the examples that I gave within my game was for one elf, there was an over-reliance on technology, and you want to make sure that the technology is stopped and that the elves are compensated properly. I gave another person, the technology needs to be embraced. There needs to be more technology throughout the Alpha Complex. So wherever you can, be sure that everything's working smoothly. Make sure, see how you can take out some of the elf redundancy to increase the productivity of the elves. Another one was go out and sample as much mind-altering substances as possible and try to get your fellow teammates to consume those outer substances so that you can document and monitor how those affects. While another one is be on the lookout for any elf trying to sample too much eggnog, trying to get too much outer substances, and always be wary of that. And so you always had people working against one another throughout this entire game. If they were ever successful or putting something into place to further that agenda, you unlock one of their secret powers, one of their elf powers, one of their mutant powers, essentially. The red box does a great job of providing you with some outlines for one of those agendas through the secret factions, the secret organizations. So you can just kind of like read through those and retool them, or you can create them yourself, and that's kind of what I did. I did a blending of those. Same with those mutant powers, or as I called them, Santa's secret gift. That was like telekinesis, pyrotechnics, electroshocks, levitation, just something to kind of add in as a thank you. Now, every time they do something else to further their agenda, make those powers a little bit more potent. You know, instead of adding 1 dice to the dice pool, you're adding 2. Instead of 2, maybe you're adding 4. Something to encourage the players to continue at that. Now, the final one is something that I added myself, and it's something that the game has baked in, but I feel like it didn't quite bring it forth properly, and that is the addition of a traitor or an insurgent, or as I said, a rogue, or like a rogue clone. And you want to start right from the beginning by stating in their mission, we have detected that one of you, one that is amongst you, is the traitor. So basically, you're playing Among Us during this game. One of you has been identified as a traitor, but we don't know which one it is. And then you privately message, because I do this all through Zoom because of the lockdown. I privately message 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 party members, even sometimes no party members. You're the insurgent. Your mission is to act directly against the current mission of getting the NOS, you know, getting the MacGuffin. And by doing this, you are now instilling paranoia throughout the entire party, where everybody is pointing their fingers at everybody else. So not only are you playing Paranoia, you're playing Werewolf or Mafia or Among Us, any of those kind of like, there's a rogue individual within your mix that's trying to circumvent your main mission. So at any point during the game, with this information, a party member can accuse another party member of being the insurgent, of being the rogue elf. The game takes a quick pause as Santa comes over everybody's mind space, basically saying, one of you has identified another as being the rogue agent. There's no kind of trial. There's no pleading of the case. It's essentially that person accused that person. That person is now dead. They lose one of their clones. Then it is revealed whether or not the accuser accused correctly. If they accused correctly, they either unlock one of their mutant powers, if they haven't already, or gain a substantial boost to their power. Only one person can accuse another person at a single time. So there is a little bit of a quick draw aspect to this, which is a lot of fun, because if they accuse wrong, that character is immediately also killed. That clone is gone, so that there are 2 clones now gone from the board. And now, of course, the clones come back as long as you still have any of your initial 6 clones with you. But if not, then, you know, you might want to be careful about who you accuse, because that gun could point right around and eliminate you as well. It's then revealed who is the insurgent, who's the rogue clone in that sense. Sometimes there isn't one. and they were just being paranoid for no reason. Sometimes there's a single, sometimes there's two. I had one where I made everybody except for one the rogue clone. And then finally, this is my last little tip, and this was something that helped keep the game going on. Whenever I felt like my players were starting to dip in terms of direction, there wasn't quite, like nobody quite knew what to do, I always put two obstacles, two items in the way for the players to either overcome, run away from, or attempt to defeat. Within Santa's village, you had, the workshop where they started. Across the workshop, you had the kitchens. Between, the area there and the area here, you had a main common area where a bunch of snowmen were there. I had everybody roll, and of course with Paranoia, it's always a discussion. If they roll in the negatives, if they start off with a negative pool and do not get enough successes, if their pool results in a negative, they take 2 additional injuries in that sense. If they get a 0, then they just get 1. Like if they don't get any successes, then they get 1 injury. And if they get any successes, then you're fine. You're able to dodge out of the way. You get a snowball, but whatever, it's fine. Whenever they moved from building to building, they always had to deal with those snowmen, which provided such a great interaction because there were a number of buildings that they had to get through. So, you had the kitchen, then you had the electronics workshop where all the elves were trying to assemble iPods, except they're all using Windows-based computers from the 90s. So trying to put together iPods or iPads or Mac computers with a window-based intersection. It was great. It was great. And then finally, chasing down the players was a pack of wolves. So whenever I felt like the tension wasn't quite enough, I just make a pack of wolves show up. So I called that Suddenly Wolves. Yeah, whenever the tension wasn't quite high enough, whenever they felt like they were getting a leg up in the situation, I was like, yeah, suddenly wolves. Like when they got into the kitchens and they're like, oh, there's the Nox. This is easy. I'm like, okay, it's easy. Suddenly wolves. A pack of wolves broke in and now you have to deal with those. Similarly, when at the end they saw that Santa's stables were right in front of them, and they were like, oh, it's home free, all we have to do is get there. I'm like, yeah, but suddenly wolves. So now you have to deal with a pack of wolves that are hungry for reindeer meat. It provided the perfect amount of tension, excitement, and an obstacle for them to get over, as well as trying to figure out who's the insurgent, right? Like who's acting against our main mission of getting this canister to Santa. Are they purposefully putting the canister in front of harm's way? Are they attempting to grab the canister in the means of being safe, but really, again, putting it into harm's way? So yeah, that is my little kind of tips and tricks, things that I found worked extremely well within my game last week and this week. So I wanted to let you guys know about it because I was so jazzed afterwards. Everybody had so much fun, and by putting these mechanics into the game right at the beginning, it really taught the group how to work against one another, which is so counterintuitive to the tabletop role-playing community, which is all about creativity, collaboration, and cooperation. So by putting these right in at the beginning, it sowed the seeds, because as much as I like the character creation and giving people, negatives and flipping things around, really utilizing these mechanics got them so excited to use much more mechanics like using the Moxie points, which I always felt was a little bit of a challenge for new players of how to use Moxie points, how the best way to use it. But if they knew, hey, I can add more dice to this dice roll by using some of my Moxie points, or I can use Moxie points to activate these new cool abilities that I have. Suddenly people were using Moxie points left, right, and center, and I had one character that went completely insane. They used up all their Moxie points and they had to act out like blowing a gasket. So it was such a great game session in that sense, and I really hope you guys use these. I hope you find these useful in your games. If you do, let me know how they go. What are some of your own kind of like homebrewy additional rule sets, additional techniques and mechanics that you put in to this game? Before we started out, I gave each character a Christmas gift. So I gave one person a literal massive bag of C4 that they could explode at any time. I gave another person a handgun, another person a fake mustache, another person I just gave a candy cane to that they whittled down into like a dagger. So yeah, that was always a great time. But yeah, that's all I've got for this one. I hope you guys enjoy. I hope you guys are having a fantastic Christmas season. I always do a Christmas related game, and this is the one that I used. I had an absolute blast. And yeah, yeah, I think that's all I've got. I hope to do more videos in the future. I already want to do my favorite starter box, talk about why I love it, what they did right, as well as my least favorite starter box, what they did wrong, what I don't like about it, because I love starter boxes. I think starter boxes are a great introduction to a game. It gives you a good flavor of what to expect. And I mean, 9 times out of 10, I buy the entire game, like all the different books for it, based off of the flavors that I get with the starter box. So anyway, that's all I've got. I hope everybody's having a great holiday season. I hope everybody's having a great time out there. Hope everybody's staying safe. And I hope you guys are having fun. I still need to figure out how to end these. I think I was ending it with "May you always roll high" or something like that. But yeah, I need to rewatch those to figure out what my tagline was. But for now, I guess I'll just say, may you always roll high, and please just have fun out there.